Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the I Am 1-2 podcast with your host, Christopher Cohn. With me in the studio is my great friend, my great support, my great engineer, the guy that makes all the magic happen, Mr. Dan the Man in the studio. Say hello to the people, Dan the Man.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show again. And I'm going to do something just because it's in this producing thing, and I'm just going to allow this to be on the air. I forgot to move the I Am 1-2 plaque over from the last podcast.
He does everything, folks. He's the magic man. Give Dan the Man a round of applause. Hit him in the comments. Tell him he's an awesome dude, because you would not be listening to this thing today without his scientific help. Thank you for that, Dan.
Yeah.
I could have left it all goofy looking and later told me I looked like a jerk out here. So see, that's a good friend for you out there, folks. All right, let's get right to it. Today we're going to be talking about this topic of black or white thinking, and living in the gray is so much easier and better, and I will explain exactly what that means. It's a concept I've been tossing around in my head as a crazy old timer, and I've seen it show up in my patients, and I think you're going to get a lot out of this today, actually. I'm very excited about the topic. Real quick, before we do that, let me explain to anybody new to the podcast what this is. This is an all things recovery podcast. We do talk a lot about the 12 steps and the principles of the program, which we think would benefit anybody out there. So if you're interested, please let us know. Look us up. Hit us up. We'll let you know. But we have tools for living that they're not teaching anywhere else. They're not teaching these in churches. They're not teaching these at schools. They're not teaching these on TV. You're getting worse principles on TV. And nobody's happy out there. So we want everyone to benefit from this word we've learned called recovery, to go back and reclaim yourself, to start to define your own life. And I had to do an extra afternoon group at the treatment center I worked at today, and I've never met these patients. And I was teaching them all about you have a choice. You're at a crossroads with your life. You have more agency and control over whether or not you're going to be happy and whether or not you're going to achieve your dreams, but not unless you deal with your programming. Now, if you're comfortable with the words training, conditioning, whatever you grew up with, I'm okay with that. I call it programming. And every person you see out there that you're saying, why are they acting so that way? Why is everybody so crazy? They're just sick. They've been programmed with some really bad tools. And we in America specialize in bad tools, emotionally, spiritually, you name it. So this is a podcast to help you with that and get you on your journey to be the best version of yourself. If you're wondering who this guy is, I don't know what I did in another life, but I grew up with an alcoholic father. I became an alcoholic addict, full-blown myself. I just celebrated, or coming up on celebrating next week, 41 years of recovery. I'm very excited about that. Grace of God shit. And I've also been professionally in the field of addiction treatment as a licensed therapist for 23 years now. And it's a blessing, and it's hard. It's a curse, too, because you're dealing with dark energy all day long. But I want everybody to have what we have. That's why I hope you're here today, and we're going to give it to you. So let's get right to the topic. All right, so living in the gray is just a phrase that I came up with. It sounds like a dull thing, like why would I want to live in the gray? But we're talking about, let's back up for a second. When I came in this program, like most people who are struggling with addiction, and especially if you grew up in a dysfunctional family of any kind, a lot of times you had to grow up too fast. And by growing up too fast, you had to assume this mantle that you appeared like you knew what you were doing and that you had all the answers and that you didn't need anybody's help, for God's sakes, I got this, right? And you overachieved and all that other stuff that happens to poor children thrown into those kind of situations. But when I came to the program, they're basically saying, hey, man, what you know ain't working for you. And you got to find a way to dump some of that stuff. And there's that old wise phrase we've all heard some version of, that the beginning of wisdom is admitting that you know nothing. And I had a patient who was on our podcast named Catherine. You can look up her episode. It was a great episode. And Catherine was in my group her first day, and she had been in and out of the program. You can hear her full story. And she couldn't stay sober and long term. And she had a lot of ideas, right? You go to the program for a while, you're going to have some concepts and some ideas in your head. And for whatever reason, and a lot of times things happen, that magic in group where higher power controls my words. And I just started talking about quantum physics, which is her bag. She's a geek for quantum physics and scientific stuff. And I was talking about whacked out principles because, we think we know everything. And I was like, well, what about this? And we don't know about the curtains of reality, all that other stuff. And she was listening to me. She'll tell you to this day, she wrote down in her journal right in front of her, I know nothing. And that woman has been sober and happy ever since. Her life has never been better. The beginning of your journey towards being happier with your life is to get rid of a lot of what you think you already know. You've got to make room for the new. So this know-nothing mind, as the Buddhists call it. Try to practice that. Try to get your ego out of the way. In addition to knowing everything, addicts and alcoholics have another liability, and that is they have this very rigid thinking. It's called black or white thinking. I remember when I was training to be a therapist at one of the hardest core treatment centers in Louisville, Kentucky here, and my supervisor was saying, that's one of the keen defects when they're trying to reason with someone, that they'll either jump to this extreme or they'll jump to this extreme, and neither which of us is a good choice, mind you. And it's either all good or it's all bad. It's either all black or it's all white. And that rigidity in our program will kill you. You will never stay sober if you put your foot down and say, I absolutely refuse to have any bending or open-mindedness in whatever area. Whatever it is, if you're going to put your foot down and say, I absolutely, no, this is the way it is, this is the truth, and I'm not willing to look at anything new, you're kind of done for. So be very careful about that rigidity. Again, if you grew up in a family system like mine, it was like you had to defend yourself intellectually that your thinking was correct. And I see this in a lot of my family members to this day, where they get off on an argument and it's like, it's got to be right. And there's a situation recently about the weather and the way I don't want to get in the details, but I felt that obligation, like I should put my 2 cents in. It's like, no, don't do. They're going to butcher you because they are convinced that this is the way the weather's supposed to be, and you've heard something different. Do not get in that fight. And we would have fights over that stuff. It doesn't mean anything. We love each other. We want to be happy for each other. We want to support each other. And we're having a fight over something stupid because this person's got to be right and this person's got to be wrong. And that's that black or white rigid thinking. And I'm telling you, it's killing us as a society. In case you ain't watched the news lately, people need to be right. And are they? Is there anybody you've ever met who actually knew the full truth and nothing but the truth about everything? No, of course you've never met that person. There's no such thing. Human beings are flawed. So hopefully, I mean, it's literally an epidemic, and the media is making money off splitting us with that I'm right, you're wrong crap, and black or white thinking, blue or white thinking, blue or red, I mean, liberal conservative thinking, right or wrong thinking. And where's it getting us? Where's it getting us beyond just sitting down and being able to have a simple conversation about, okay, I'll listen to your point. Why do you see that differently? What is your take on it? What's the gray in here? Okay, so I've had some interesting experiences through my time being sober about people who read you from one thing you say, and then from the minute you say that one thing, you're in your mind, you're frozen in time that's who you are, and they just shut down everything else you might have to offer them. I've had that happen to me as a sponsor. When they got my new guy, here's something that crosses his panties a little too hard, and he's like, well, that's that guy. He's like that forever, and I can't ever get out from it. That's that rigid thinking. And so there was this guy at my gym, man. He's kind of a loud mouth, and he's obviously very bent one way on politics. And I just happened to make a comment that I thought was advocating, because I'm a social worker. I've been taught to advocate, and I'm advocating for compassion. And he just, boom, just took my whole ass and just dumped me in the liberal camp and say, well, you one of them blah, blah, blahs. And I wouldn't even say who it was for who was president at the time. And I'm just like, really? You're going to take one thing I said in defense of kindness, in defense of compassion for people who are suffering. But no, fuck that. Rigid thinking, you're going over in this camp. And I could never get out from under it. This guy would throw little ribs my way, little barbs my way, and I would just laugh because I'm sitting there going, doesn't bother me, man. I'm not bent the way you think I'm bent. I'm a fully thinking, fully rounded human being who has opinions on a lot of things, and one opinion does not define who the fuck I am. And if you think it does, you are one ignorant person. And how many people are convinced of that out there today? They almost like, I was just talking to my sister, and she lives in a place where there's a lot of people who don't agree with her point of views. And she says she gets stereotyped. You just get put in this little box and you have nothing else to offer them. They won't even listen to you about a recipe for a better apple pie because literally they've made up their mind that that's who you are. You're the enemy. So I'm just going to shut down everything else you have to offer me. And that's a very dangerous place you're getting to when people lose compassion and they lose that ability to talk to people. So again, be careful of this black or white thinking. And today we're going to talk about how you might be able to get to the area of gray and live a lot more happy, a lot more peaceful. And it's where life exists, actually. It's in the gray. It's not in the black or white. All right, so I was first experienced to this idea, both from my sponsor, but really most of it came from me being a sponsor. Because I would see my sponsor do this, and I wouldn't know how he knew that magic answer to tell me whenever I had a problem in my life. I would call him up, and I'd be in a rage about, I don't know what to do, and all this shit's falling down, and blah, 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 blah. And I'd say, I've either got to do this or I've got to do that, and that's all I can see, and neither one of us is a good option. And out of nowhere, my sponsor, while I'm doing this, would go, well, you could do this. And it'd be right in the middle. Right in the fucking middle. And when he would say it, it would zing me because I'd be like, holy shit, you can do that? First, that'd be the first question. I wasn't sure, like, you could actually do that? And then the second thing was, how'd you come up with that? How did you actually come up with that solution out of all that when I could only see this or that? And he goes, oh, it was easy, because he's objective. He's not personally involved in the drama and the emotion that I'm caught up in, right? So that was the first thing that got my attention. And then it started happening to me as a sponsor when my guys were looking at me like, what's the answer? What do I do here? I mean, these are serious things. I'm either going to jail the rest of my life or I'm going to fucking do it. And I was like, well, there's this. And I would be touched by that divine inspiration and be that channel for the spirit world, higher power, whatever. Don't worry about what we call it, to come through and give me this genius idea. And my guy's looking at me like I am a genius, and I'm not. I'm just another drunk. But if I'm working my tools, I'm in the pocket, and I can see things because I'm not caught up like he is. And that gray area stunned me for its effectiveness, because inevitably when my guy would follow what I told him to do, he's calling me, and Dan will verify this in a second when he talks. He's calling me the next day telling me how it worked out perfectly. Astonished how it worked out perfectly, and all he could see were two not really good ideas. I'm either going to do this or I'm either going to quit my job, leave my wife, and go roam the country, or I'm going to stay with her and never say anything and be miserable the rest of my life. Well, dude, there's a middle ground. And I'm telling you, a lot of people live in these rigid, black or white, Christian, whatever, right or wrong frames of mind, and they're miserable. And the reason they're miserable is because life is too complex to break down to black or white, right or wrong. It's too complex. If you have not lived long enough on this planet to see this, I pity the fool, as Mr. T would say, because literally life is so nuanced and there's so many subtle layers. And the minute you dig under a layer and then you see another layer and you realize, oh crap, I totally misread that situation. And to be honest with you, that's something I love in my personal recovery. I didn't like it when I was using, because they were always telling me I was wrong. So I didn't like being wrong when I was using. But when I'm in recovery and I make up my mind about something and then I get shown how wrong I was about something, that happened to me recently. Somebody new comes into our group and you look them up and down, you read them and you go, yeah, I know where that guy's coming from. And then when they open their mouth, you're like, I was completely, not just a little bit wrong, I was 100 crazy% wrong about who that person is. And yet my mind had jumped to that little assumption, thinking I know everything. And then the gray showed me wrong again, Sherlock. And being wrong is a blessing in recovery. It didn't feel that way again before recovery again. But now it provides me an opportunity to get more humility. It provides me an opportunity to get to know my higher power more, because I don't feel like my higher power is punishing me when I'm wrong. It actually feels like a wink and a nudge, like, yeah, it's stupid. Yeah, you laugh at yourself. And it's funny to me. It's funny. Like, yeah, I did. After all these years of sobriety, I freaking fell into that quick judgment. And how many times through the day do you do that, folks? Walking through the store, in traffic, look over at the car next to you and just make up your mind and you know what that person's all about. So, again, gray, I'm telling you, is the place to be, and you're going to love getting there. All right, so I think social media is responsible for a lot of our distillation of the complexities of life down into just 20-second sound bites. You know, they have to do that to grab your attention. And I was listening to a comedian on a podcast talking about, it was really strong and powerful. He was actually pleading with his fellow comedians to not let the platforms ruin the art form of comedy. Because he was noting that with the new comics, they're coming in and using YouTube and quick hit viral videos where there's crowd work and somebody says something outrageous and then suddenly it goes viral and they get noticed. but then they're tailoring their comedy to that quick bite. Like it's got to be that little 20-second sound bite. And it's not, where would we be if George Carlin couldn't have told his stories or Richard Pryor couldn't have told his stories? That's the heart of comedy since the dawn of time, is telling stories. But he was pleading, don't let the platform, what is YouTube? Hello, YouTube. We're on YouTube and Instagram and all that, determine your art. And I feel like that's what the media has done to our thinking processes. One of the gifts of going to higher education is, I was taught from day one, is we're going to teach you how to do critical thinking. Critical thinking means you're going to be a scientist that's open to whatever information you get. So I'll listen to all points of view. Even if I disagree, I will listen to it. Then I will add it all up and come to some aggregate understanding of this feels like truth to me. But I will ponder on it. I won't just reject it. And, please realize, guys, there's an agenda for having us all at each other's throat, okay? We live in a state called Kentucky, and it's on our state flag. Would you like to know what it says? A house divided against itself cannot stand. What do you think's happening out there? So I would encourage all of you all to just resist the 20-second sound bite. Try to watch a long movie every now and then, even though you don't want to. Read a book. Do something that challenges your attention span. I showed a video in afternoon group today, and it was 40 minutes, and I didn't know if they'd hang with me. And when I stopped it and I saw their boxes, they were all like totally into it. And that's what this comedian was saying, is don't reject and think that people can't have that kind of attention span anymore. Hollywood's doing that right now with movies, shortening them, making them all spectacle, because they think we don't have the attention span anymore. And yet, this comedian said, what about Shakespeare? He still holds audiences because it's real, it's true. It's talking about human nature and stuff. So, sidetrack, but there's another area of rigidity and black or white thinking, is this, making up your mind about stuff instantly and not taking time to consider it. The main area I want to talk about today with living in the gray that I find to be fascinating, and this comes up in my group a lot, and to be honest with you, this was the genesis of why I wanted to bring up this topic in the podcast today. When my patients are doing some of their best processing, and by the way, when you're in therapy, the whole goal of therapy, as far as this therapist is concerned, is I want to go back and unwind the mystery of what happened to me. All right? None of us got to choose our parents. None of us got to choose where we grow up, what our religion was going to be, what our politics were. That was all pushed on us. And that becomes your programming, your training, whatever. And so I've got to go back and unwind, and we have the inventory process in the 12 steps that the churches and other things do not have, where I can actually go in and do deep surgery on how I'm wired. Like, why do I look at it that way? Where does that come from? Oh, that's my dad. Oh, my granddad used to do that. And do I like it? Okay, yeah, maybe sometimes I don't mind keeping that. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't believe that today, but I still see it that way because of the wiring, right? And we know that's the way the brain works. You have to challenge the subconscious and bring it to the conscious mind. And in group every day, we do that through processing, okay? As you're talking about it, you're remembering things, and then you remember it later to maybe think, oh, that's connected to that. That's when you start to heal. So I'll be working with my patients, and they'll be doing really dynamite work, like they're crying and they're expressing honestly, and all of a sudden they'll pause and they'll say, it's a terrible thing to say that I don't like my mother, and I'm like, what did you just do there? You just judged the crap out of yourself with your interior critic. For what reason? Why did you say that? I don't know. I said, I mean, I love my mother, but I shouldn't be saying these things about her. And I'm like, whoa. There's that rigidity. Like, it's because it's my mother or my father or whoever, my kids, I'm supposed to think nothing but happy thoughts, and I'm supposed to love them. That's impossible. That's impossible. It's not achievable. As human beings, at some point, if you live with someone, no matter how saintly they might be, you might live with Mother Mary, and she's going to do something to piss you off, like unload the dishwasher, whatever it is. Life is more complex than just saying, I just love them. No, you don't. Not all the time. Yes. Believe it or not, sometimes I love my kids. I don't have kids, but sometimes I want to kill them, right? Based on what's going on. And so I teach them about the gray in emotions and how that is your way to healing. You have got to get yourself out of the way as an interior critic, especially when writing inventory, which is the part of the book that I'm writing, I'm finishing up on the 12 steps for everybody. As I'm trying to make it very clear, you've got to stop judging. Just put it on paper. Everything you feel. Yes, I love them, but they did this, and this I didn't like so much, and this really hurt me. And if you can't be honest about that, you'll never get free of it. Period. It's unrealistic to say, but my dad's my hero. He never did anything wrong. As soon as I get a patient in group who says my parents were great, I'm like, great. You're going to tell me they didn't do anything that pissed you off growing up? You are a damn liar. Because I know 16-year-olds. I know 15-year-olds. I know 14-year-olds. I know 13-year-olds. At some point, they did something to piss you off. Stop being a liar. But because of that rigid thinking, their brain can't even go there to open up those hallways they need to look in. Because mom was a saint or dad was my hero, right? So, again, when we process family stuff, and we're going to do some of that work in group tomorrow, I tell them this ain't about saying they were bad parents. That's going to get you nowhere. We're trying to identify what was your truth. What was your experience? How did that feel to your little kid, not to your adult self now, which we'll rationalize, but how did that feel to your gut, to your little kid who was in that situation going, I don't feel safe. I don't feel supported. You're not there for me. Can you be honest about that? Because that's your reality. Unless you can start to face that and heal that, you're repeating that in your relationships today. You're picking partners who aren't there for you, partners who don't support you, and you never figure out why. Why do I keep being crappy people? I always pick an alcoholic. I always pick somebody who's fucked up. Yeah, that's you. Mm-hmm. That's your freaking wiring, and you don't even know you're doing it. That's the miracle of recovery. You can actually change that. The brain likes to change. We can rewire you, but you've got to be willing to look at the gray. So emotions is a big one to look at that gray with and say, yeah, I love them, but there's some things I got issues with, and I need to write them down because I have some resentments, okay? All right. So how do you do that? I really do think without a support group, it's just impossible. As I said earlier, and then I'm going to get Dan's input in here, to process gray, you need an objective voice. I'm limited in the amount of perspective that I can see on my issues. Again, my emotions cloud my thinking. My ego always wants to make me the hero and clouds my thinking. And I need an objective person who can say, well, brother, I see you see it like that, but I see it like this. Or I can see it from this perspective. And I was actually working with an alcoholic on the way here who we were kind of butting heads a little bit until I just said, what's the issue, man? And then he listened to me. I could tell. We went from, there was a little bit of a wall, and then all of a sudden the wall crumbled, and he just listened. And I could tell he heard me. And after that, we were talking like heart to heart instead of him feeling like I was being the sponsor, getting on him. And that's where magic happens, man. That's where you can change your whole path forward. By having that other person you're willing to listen to who can show you the gray or show you the different way of looking at it. That will help you to forgive the people who have hurt you the most, is a sponsor, a support group that can show you how to do that. But I would advise you strongly, if you want to start working on the gray, get somebody you trust in your life, a teacher, mentor, sponsor, coach, who you can bounce things off of and say plain out, I'm looking at it this way. How do you see it? I'm not sure I'm seeing it right. What do you see? And then be willing to hear it. Because immediately after I ask that, my defenses go up and go, don't want to hear it. Nope, I'm right. It's okay. That's normal for your human ego. But the magic that comes out of that, even if here's a tool. I used to say this to my sponsor all the time. I need to think about that. I don't have to accept it right in the minute. I'll be pissed off. I'll be like, I don't want to hear what he's saying. Let me think about it. And he'll be like, cool, go think about it. And I go think about it, and I do think about it. And I come back and I say, you were right, okay. But it helps me to grow, and it helps me to have a happy life. And Lord, if you could teach this or share this with anybody out there that you see is suffering from this propaganda that they're feeding us every day. You know what I heard Gabor Mate say the other day about the president? I have to pass this on because it was stunning. He said, when the president on the campaign trail was saying the world is a horrible place, that's what he grew up with. If you look at his dad and the way his dad treated him and the way the family was, that's his perspective. That's his paradigm. That's the way he looks at the world. And that's what's really scary about our programming. It will define your whole life. And you get a chance in therapy and through 12 steps to completely start fresh and unwind all that junk. So we do have another person in the room with a lot of wisdom and experience named Dan the Man, and I'd like to get his take. I only do this as a starter, sort of an appetizer to get us going here. So Dan, any thoughts on this living in the gray and the rigid black and white thinking, and any angle on that you want to share from your own experience?
Yeah, first thing when you first presented me with what you were talking about before, you talked about that it wasn't black or white. I started thinking about the gray man concept, where I'm gonna move around life and not be too sticking out and getting noticed too much. And a lot of times I give my guys that kind of advice when they're dealing with a lot of times they're coming into recovery with a tenuous relationship on their shoulders, and they tend to want to strike out at that, and they want to bat back at it, and they want to defend themselves to great extents, would really like to write an essay to the person over something. And that's that gray man thing that I tend to throw at them about, let's just lay low, man. Let's just do this work and just keep all that off of you. Now, I know it's a little bit different thing than what you're talking about, but there is some relationship to that, to be in that gray area instead of this I'm right, she's wrong kind of thing,
It's right on target. I love it.
And
where'd you pick that up at, Gray Man? Is that a phrase you picked
Well,
up?
there was a movie called Gray Man, and then there was some stuff that was running around the internet for a while talking about that, and some of it is like people who are like spies running around the streets. They're wanting to be gray. They don't want to be standing out. They don't want anybody to really notice them, man. They just kind of want to move under the radar. And that's kind of the way the same thing is like in these relationships. You need to stay under the radar, because if you get up where the radar sees you, man, the torpedoes are going to hit you. And I like to say, I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like in some of these relationships, the significant other has a voodoo doll of my friend, and every chance they get, they stick the needle in it, man. And we got to quit giving them opportunities to prompt them to stick the needle in it. They're going to do it enough on their own. But then we step up there and when we try to defend ourselves, or we try to, do stuff. And a lot of times, just exactly what you're saying there too, this deal about having a sponsor in your life and somebody you can talk to beforehand. And, she said this, what do you think I ought to say? Or she said this and I want to say this. And I went, no, don't say that. Yeah. Hold on, wait a minute. Let's back up. Don't do that. And this whole concept of I don't see myself that well. And I get presented with that all the time. And I know that's true for me, that I just don't see me that good. I've got a great sponsor that sees me better than I see me, and support groups that do.
And when you enter that low profile gray state, you're protecting yourself from further damage. Because I had many experiences with people I had struggled with in my early recovery, where I would keep returning to them, expecting them to give me the support and attention I needed on an issue. And this is what my therapist, I think, said about it. He says, you're impaling yourself on them.
Yep.
It's like literally you're throwing, it's like that, but I'm right. And they can't give it to you. You're just stabbing and bleeding out. You need to just pull back and lay low so they can't stab you anymore.
Yeah, keep your head down in the foxhole so the bullets don't hit you that they're throwing at you. Two of my favorite statements in recovery are, I don't know, and I could be wrong. Because those two things pretty much, there are some things I know, and when I know something, I will stand on that ground. But for the most part, most things, especially when it deals with these dynamics of human relationships and the stuff that goes on here, I don't know if I'm right. I don't know. Looks to me like this, but I don't know. I didn't used to be able to say that I don't know was hard. And that's something that's happened in that handyman business, is that at times I learned that I walk in a place and I said, I can't do that. I can't, and I don't want to do that. I do not want to say I can't do it, or I don't know how, or I don't know. Those were words that were awful tough for me for a long time. And, I listened to an Al-Anon speaker, and it was actually an alcoholic, but he was talking about his wife being an Al-Anon, and he said he killed her before he got sober with the phrase they teach. You could be right. Could be right.
That's how she won every argument. She would just spew bullshit on her being drunk, and she'd be getting ready to go to the meeting, and before she went out the door, she would just look and say, honey, you could be right. And she'd walk right out the door, and he would just seethe with anger. So that's another version of I could be wrong, but I like you could be right.
I'm pretty good at accepting my sponsor stuff today, and there was a couple of days ago where one particular topic, and there was some, and I kind of laughed at that one because I wasn't even taking it bad anymore. And I think it's a lot of practice and stuff of knowing and trusting that what's coming. But I will say there was a time in my recovery, and there was a beautiful thing about Marco Polo, is that you could sit back and digest that, and maybe even listen to it again, and sit back and give some time, and you go, okay, because initially I'm kind of like that mountain cur, man. The hackles come up on my back, and I'm right off the bat, I'm kind of like, hold on, that's not what I meant. That's not what and that little pause and waiting through in Marco Polo allows for that, instead of being like direct engagement, where you tend to not have the opportunity to pause. With direct engagement, you tend to have a tendency to want to defend yourself immediately, right? You want to defend yourself right then, and this communication through Marco Polo gives you that automatic it forces a pause on you. It makes you do that. And I'll circle back to my parents too. First time I went through the steps, I couldn't look at my parents. I couldn't. I just wasn't mature enough. I just wasn't, sober, recovery mature enough, emotionally mature enough to be able to really look at them, because I had that same thing you were talking about a minute ago, that and all in all, my parents are pretty good parents. They really were. They were pretty good parents. But I still picked up a lot of stuff from both of them. And it took me the second time to go through the steps. I always tell my guys that second time through the steps is really where I was able to actually, after I had gotten all the big horse poop off of me, then I had the wherewithal to actually look at what the training and program I got from my mom and dad.
Which is the perfect timeline, because at first, from recovery from dangerous addictions, you need stability. We need to just get the bleeding to stop. So let's stop the drinking. Let's get you stable and feeling semi-comfortable sober, And then for me, Dan, it was going to therapy, and I was fortunate to benefit from that in early recovery. It opened up my eyes to, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I didn't realize. I mean, it. I'm not blind. I knew what I grew up with, but I didn't know it was a whole ball of wax unto itself. And I try to share that with all my patients. Do you know how many patients I actually get in that afternoon group where I run that group, and I don't know the patients? These are fresh people from other groups, and we just get what we get. And I go, and I hear issues, and I'm like, has anybody ever mentioned to you that you're an adult child and alcoholic? And they just look at you like, no. And I've been to tons of therapy. Not one. There was one who was currently seeing a therapist, and I said, they never said, obviously, from what you just shared with me in 2 minutes of knowing you, you've been extremely damaged by your alcoholic parent, and none of them said you're an adult child of an alcoholic. It's astonishing how much it gets missed for any of y'all out there that might be struggling in recovery and not dealing with those issues.
The worst place in the world, and I know it takes a lot of flack, but where you see this black and white all the time is out there on the social media, man. When you don't have to talk to each other, and you don't have to face each other. Everybody out there thinks they're right, and everybody out there thinks that the other person's wrong. It's awful.
It is sad. It's killed discourse, and you can't learn if there's no conversation. And again, it's because it's been monetized. The media they've got to keep the fucking money rolling in with it, ad revenue. So they're trying to bring up the most inflammatory, quick hit shit to just get you inflamed and watching and keep watching. And it's not really any substance. You're not learning anything about what's really going on in world affairs. You're just getting the worst highlights to keep you watching. And but people will glob onto that and think it's the God's honest truth, and they'll die on that sword,
Yep, they can cut it all up and make it feed you what they want to feed you, and then you don't get context.
I heard a neuroscientist say this recently, and I was astonished how obvious, but I thought how profound. He said, who knew the human brain was that easily controlled and swayable from what we've seen over the past 10 years? And right now, that's the whole cutting edge of science right now, is that plasticity and how the brain is trained to what's normal. And it will resist change, because even if it's a good change, it will resist giving up heroin, because that's become the new normal. Yeah. And that's kind of like the people who have extreme views either way. He's like, well, can you see it this way? No, they can't give up the normal. That's the normal. I look at it this way, And you and I went through our little bout on that, because we come from different sides of the tracks, and you were kind of resistant, thinking, Who's this guy? What's he saying to me? Is that insulting? It's like, no, it's not insulting. Just trying to get you to open up your mind a little bit.
Yep. And, I think we all have to go through, we all get to go through that. That's not a have to, that's a get to. We get to go through that and begin to have because you don't arrive. It doesn't even very many people arrive at these doors with that in place.
No.
That open mind.
My sponsor did that for me, for sure. So what about your sponsees and teaching them about like emotions when they're doing really good work in processing anger, and then they'll say, but I shouldn't feel that way. I mean, that is so common. I run that all the time, man.
Yeah, it's big. You have to, I'm all the time validating people's emotions. You can feel what you need to feel, and then it's okay, and especially okay with me. You may not want to take that to her, but with me, yeah, blow it out, and don't apologize for it. I'm more and more of having this thing on no apologies. No apologies. You can't apologize for venting on me real hard. That's not okay. You do not have to, you can't apologize for that. But there is a lot of that, I know I shouldn't feel this way. And
so one of my old therapist friends taught me the phrase you may have heard, thou shalt not should on thyself.
Yeah.
So I teach my patients that right from the get-go and call them out. I also had a sponsee recently that I had to challenge who was saying, I'm sorry, I'm dumping all this on you. And I was like, you're freaking working. Here's the thing, folks. If I have a person who's like honestly venting, I want to kill them. The very fact that they're venting that means they won't. How many times in the news has an armed gunman run down strangers and then left a big list manifesto of grievances because he was a loner, and his neighbors say, well, he never talked to anybody, and we don't know. He was carrying all that alone, bro. So do that for your sponsees. Give them that safe space to get it all out. So, but if you all have any thoughts about this topic of living in the gray and it resonated with you, we'd love to hear you. Like I said, I don't know anybody else that's talking about it. I mean, I do hear about black or white thinking, but this has just been coming to me, that phrase, living in the gray. And it's very peaceful in my experience for me to say I don't know, and for me to say I don't have to make up my mind about that right now, and I don't have an opinion on that. We do have a principle in our program that we don't have any opinion on outside issues. That gets violated a lot, but that's okay. It's just a way to go through your life where you just don't get caught up in all of it. Because I always tell my patients, bottom line, no matter whatever's going on in the news today, you can die, go to Mars, leave the planet for 20 years, and you come back. The headlines will be saying the same exact thing with a little bit of difference, but it's the same thing. Oh, there's another war in Gaza. Oh, oil prices are going up again. Oh, the economy is going to go into recession. Every freaking 20, 30, 40 years go away, come back, just the same, man. So why do we get so caught up? I don't know. I think people don't have anything else in their lives sometimes, and that worries me. You're not living to your potential, so you're just going to spend time getting caught up in all this stuff that you can't do anything about, right? So, any last thoughts on that, Dan?
I can't think of the millions of times I've come to my sponsor with a black or white thing and get a great answer, and it works out to be the perfect answer. And usually, over time, it took a little bit of that, but after a little while, you kind of you start depending on it. You say, okay, I'm going to bring these things, and it's almost like you're a little blind to it. It's not like I'm going, Christopher's going to give me the great answer. I'm still coming, know that I'm going to go, that if I share these things and I make a lot. What Scott Lee say? I still make mistakes, but I make a higher quality of mistake today. I don't make those low quality mistakes anymore. And can't think of how many times you've given me gray answers or, someplace in between where I was stuck in the black and white, just couldn't see it.
And it is pure magic. And as being on the other end of it, I'm just trying to be there for my guy and really listen to him. And I'm not trying to figure out his problem. That's where you'll go off the rails. I'm just listening. I'm being as open as I can, and invariably, whoosh, through the side window, God sends this little thing in, and I'm like, that sounds good. Yeah. I'll tell him that. It's a miracle way to live, to have that in your life, guys. So think about it. Try to get some supports. It'll make all the difference in the world. All right, this is the part of the podcast where we shift and we do your questions written to us in person from the address IAM12, the word recovery, @gmail.com, IAM12recovery @gmail.com. And we will literally give you free therapy, free experience, strength, and hope on any issue you're struggling with. And that's another area of the living gray thing is that when I don't know the answer, I can say, well, let's pray on it. Or I can say, let me talk to my sponsor. So literally, this is like calling your grand sponsor here and saying, I'm struggling with this issue in my life. What do you think? And we'd love to hear from you. And when you send us something, give us a little background like these people did so we know the full situation to address, not just a question.
Some context.
Yeah, a little context so we can make it a little more personable. But I promise you two things. We will never identify you. I promise we will never identify who you are. And you're safe. We're not going to beat you up here. We're going to give you sound advice from our experience, things we've lived through. We won't try to talk about things we don't know anything about. But I always make the joke, even if you want to know what to name your dog, we would love to hear from you. So please drop us a note and say hello. All righty, our first letter here is this. I have been in AA and participating in recovery a very long time. But one thing that has never been clear to me, because it seems to vary depending on who you ask, is this question here. Is your sobriety date your last drink or your first day sober? For me personally, it made more sense to make it my first day sober, hence sobriety date. I like the way you think. It's very, very literal, very logical. That makes sense. But I can also see how remembering and marking your last quote-unquote drunk might also be a powerful reminder of what you left behind. I like that too. Is there any consensus on this after all these years, or is it more of a whatever works for you question? Is it a bit obscure? Because it is a bit obscure because the big book doesn't even address it and actually talk about birthdays or a sobriety date, because we stay sober one day at a time. Very much looking forward to your response, and thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. That was a good long letter. You just made me think about, I had looked up the origins of coins and chips for sobriety that we hand out at birthdays, and that originates from 1941 from Elmira, New York. Because apparently there was a reference to a meeting where somebody celebrated and they were given a chip by their sponsors. So that's kind of like the first documentation. But I don't know. I think I'm sure the early old timers celebrated, recovery dates. Like, okay, you celebrated a year, whatever. I'm pretty sure they probably didn't do the 6 months, 9 months, and all that we do. If you have a home group, by the way, I will tell you that's worked out really well for us. I know there was a side note in here, but if it helps you, some home groups only do 3, 6, and 9, but we do every month. And I can't tell you how much it means to the guys to know they're going to get their 2 month, they're going to get their 4 month. And then the past year, we recently added the 18 month, because that's a long stretch to go from your first year birthday to getting your second year birthday. So, and they're used to getting up and getting a little bit of juice. So it really helps them. There's a lot of big retention rate in our group with the newcomers. And I think that attention, and not only do we let them talk at every meeting, but we also acknowledge them every month they're sober. All right, so I've been around since 1983. I hit my first meeting with my treatment center, put me in the van and going to the AA meeting, and that was up in Minnesota and Minneapolis. And I do remember a few old timers talking about the date of their last drunk back then. I had my last drink on blah, 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 and then they would tell their story. It's not that common, actually. If you listen to some of the old timer tapes on YouTube, they don't use that phrase so much. They'll just say, my sobriety date is blah, blah, blah. And it seemed to shift just about the time I came in, at least in the region. Again, AA is so compartmentalized based in California, AA, Washington, AA, Minnesota. I've been around, seen some of that. So I don't want to speak for everybody. But I will say what I've seen is it seemed to slowly shift to what I agree with you on. It seems like logical. What was your first full date of sobriety, hence your sobriety date? I do like that logic. It makes total sense to me. But if you prefer, or anybody else does out there, and say, hey, I had my last drink on blah, 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 I'm totally fine with that too. But there is a problem with that one as well. I had my last drink on November 5th. I had my last marijuana on December 12th. I had my last Suboxone. And, you can get it many sobriety dates that way. So I just like, what is your first full date of absolute abstinence? You didn't do nothing. And but choose for yourself. That is one cool thing. With most meetings being open and most people being cool, you can do your own thing a little bit with some of that. But I do like any thoughts on that, the sobriety date thing, Dan, or anything?
Well, yeah, first off, our topic tonight is gray area.
Ha! Very good.
And I remember you saying this before in another podcast, but I'd heard another thing, and I just looked it up, and my thing is telling me, my computer is telling me that, what's it say here? The actual history of how AA chips came about is still a mystery. It is believed to have originated in 1942 in Indianapolis. The man who began the Alcoholics Anonymous section in Indianapolis, Doherty S., is thought to have started the sobriety coin tradition within this section of AA.
Of course, Dan's from Indiana,
Yeah,
so
I'm
no
gonna beat that drum.
bias there.
Yep. But that's what it says, and it talks about Portland Main Group started using colored poker chips at about the same time to mark sobriety. And Sister Ignatia, she was given away, before all this, she was giving her patients a Sacred Heart medallion that she would give to them, and said she asked them to return it before they took before they were going to take another drink, to bring it back to her before they did that.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm with you. I don't think it really matters. Pick a date. I know I talk about this one podcast guest I had on the Spiritual Underground podcast, Brad George. He's passed away now. Really good guy, solid AA dude. I was really glad that some friends of mine made sure that he got on, his story got recorded before he passed, because if I hadn't have done it, I doubt it would have gotten there. Another one of those beacons of recovery that kind of rode under the waves. Nobody really knew him that well except for the people in his community. And when I asked him what his sobriety date was at the beginning of it, he said, I don't know. He said, I know I got sober sometime between March the 15th and March the 17th. But he said, I was in a total blackout. They found me in a ditch. I don't really know what day it really was. And he said, just to be safe, I celebrated on March the 17th, which is
St.
the latest
Patrick's
day.
Day. Why would you not?
And that too. But it's very important that you grab one, and stick to it and make it important to you, and ultimately, if it's the last day you drank, in my opinion, and the last day you drank or the first day you were sober, I agree with you. I think it's more appropriate to be the first day you were sober, and that is my philosophy and how I try to do things. Now, I will also tell you I was part of that nicotine quitting group, and they did it the other way. They did it on
your quit date.
Your quit date was the day, the last time you used. Was your quit date. And again,
but see, that
does
makes
it really
sense.
matter?
No, but that makes sense for the phrase quit date.
Quit date.
Yeah, that's the date you quit.
Yep.
Not the day you started.
Yep. Because I don't think too many. That's another thing. We wake up sober one day. Typically, and not always, but there's usually an overnight with drugs and alcohol, right? Generally.
Correct. And sometimes people
pass
use
out that
past
night and we
midnight.
wake up
So
that
then you
morning.
wonder what day it is.
Yeah, and I suppose that little point could be there too. But even if you went to sleep at 12:05, I think you could still stand on. You went to sleep, and when you woke up the next day, that day was the first day you were sober. If you went to sleep at
I'll even go further than that. If you partied till 4:30 or whatever, then passed out, I would still consider that okay. When you woke up that day, that's your sobriety day. But if you woke up and continued using for a little bit in the morning, no, and then you got a different day.
Yep.
So again, choose whatever poison works for you. It is a really interesting question, and there's no set rules on it. Thank God for that.
Pick a date, stick with it.
Stick with it. All right, second reading for today. Greetings. Hello there. I am having a hard time managing my money. Welcome. To get myself in a better position in life instead of just surviving week by week. What would be some good ways to manage my finances so I'm not struggling so much or feel like I am suffering by going without? I don't have anyone close to me I can really ask for this help, or at least I don't really trust them. When coming to money, you got to be careful. So any ideas are greatly appreciated. Thanks so much, your buddy. Yeah, it's a good friend of ours that's written before, and we really appreciate your questions, man. I'm not going to be Dave Ramsey here, so I'm going to give advice. I'm going to talk in generalities about early recovery and how our finances are wrecked. I was listening to a speaker this past week who owed the IRS $80,000, and his sponsor, every time he would cry about it, would just laugh. That's all? A lot of us had that. And he would just go, oh. And then he said, and then his sponsor insulted him even more by turning it into service work. And he said every time a newcomer would come to the meeting and be crying about their $1,200 bill to the IRS, he'd say, hey, hold that thought. Don, come over here. Tell this guy how much you owe. And he'd go, $80,000. And he'd go, and they'd all laugh. And he'd go, I just try to be of service. And he would walk away. So it's normal for everything to be screwed up. Health, relationships, money. And a lot of us did not get any good training on money. It was like If you had money, it's like spend it all at once and get high. That's all I knew. Have a good time. Worry about tomorrow, right? So we have to get teachers and talk to your sponsor about this, about being accountable, that you're going to, I would say be careful about miscellaneous purchases that you just don't need. A lot of things add up, if you buy coffee out or things like that, that by the time that you look at your bill, you're like, wow, I spent a lot of money on stuff I didn't really need. I got a coffee machine at home, right? And you need a sponsor, though, to be accountable to that, because we're all stuck in our routines and we think we need things. Like you said, I don't want to feel like I'm suffering by going without. There are ways to do that where you can treat yourself still and still be on a budget. But sometimes we're not thinking that because out of habit, I already spend on the more expensive item because that's what I'm used to putting in the shopping cart or whatever, right? So I would advise strongly, be honest and talk to your sponsor and get some accountability program going and really outline your goals. Is your goal to put enough money aside that you can get out of your current situation and maybe move and get a better job? Or is your goal to just get more than a week-to-week paycheck existence, have a little cushioning, which would be nice. Everybody would like that. What are your goals? What do you want to do? What do you want to achieve financially? I mean, sure, you can say you have more money, but that's vague. We need to be specific. And finally, besides looking at what you're spending, you can also look at what you're bringing in. And I have found in my experience that by the time I got to the point where my bills were not being covered by the job I was currently in, it turned out to be a message from my higher power that I needed to be brave to move to the next level and get a different job. And I was resistant. And we all get resistant. If we hate a job, it's like, oh, that's uncomfortable. Start that process all over again and fill out all the forms. Trust me, it's the last thing on earth I want to do. I think it's awful. However, if you look at it as an opportunity that maybe your higher power is trying to say, hey, man, they're not paying you enough and you deserve something better, then possibly you could start a whole ball rolling towards something really good. That money has always been taught to me by my spiritual teachers as a means to an end, and we in our society treat it as the goal. It's not the goal. It just buys freedom and choice and power, right? But it's not the end all be all. So what are your goals? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? Do you want a better job? Is that what's underneath all this? Do you hate your living situation? I would really get honest with your sponsor about all that jazz. And again, even as I'm saying all this is all just higher power coming through because I didn't know I was going to say all that. So, Dan, any thoughts on this poor man struggling with his, as we all do? I was broke as a joke in early recovery. I could barely afford a pack of cigarettes.
I'll start off with, I arrived here with $80,000 of unsecured debt between
80 grand?
Yeah,
Same amount? That's crazy.
Between a criminal lawyer, a divorce lawyer, and then credit card bills that I'd ran up in the madness. I got here, and in 8 years, some magic thing happened, and in 8 years, I had that all cleaned up. And that's a pretty good run. And I just stayed at it. I just stayed at it. And got all that cleaned up. Now I've taken on some more debt lately. I've got a new vehicle that provided me with some additional debt, but it's worth it to me. I'm okay with that. I was doing something for the retreat that's coming up from the first recording date, almost a month. That there's something strangely comfortable about the familiar weight of worry and control. I like that line. There is something strangely comfortable about the familiar. Mm. That's talking about your staying at your job, not moving on.
Well, it also is staying in anxiety because I'm used to anxiety over money or staying in worry.
It says worry.
Yeah, I heard that.
Control.
I heard that. Yeah.
And I like it too. It goes on to say, and I'm going to, but maybe just maybe your next breakthrough won't come from pushing harder, but from sitting still, choosing silence over strategy. I like that.
Nice.
A budget. You got to have a budget, man. If you're trying to do what you're doing, you need to be putting in there, and you said it in different words about income, output and income, what's coming in and what's going out. But until you put that on paper, you can't adjust it and you can't do anything with it. You're just swinging in the wind without it on paper telling you, okay, my electric is this much, my water is this much, my coffee is this much, my groceries are this much. And okay, and then here's what I'm bringing in, And honestly, if you really are serious about this, you might need to pick up another job and do too. Maybe it is a better job, as Christopher said. Maybe that is what it is. But maybe until then, and it's interesting how the universe, when you start shaking the trees and proving to demonstrating to higher power that you really mean this thing you're going after, the apples start falling out of the tree, you know, and lo and behold, I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, that new job comes slipping in the side gates on you while you're over here hustling over here trying to, you know, maybe working 2 jobs for a little bit, and then boom, this one comes in and lands in your hands. I mean, it's happened to me plenty of times. Happened to me lately, where I'm just hustling, doing what not really hustling. I'm just doing. I'm in my true north with my compass, and I'm moving in that direction, and good things fall alongside in my path. I get to bend over and pick them up, put them in my pocket.
There is an energy to getting the ball rolling, just like in physics, right? And you're an engineer, you understand that you can't stay in stasis. You can't just sit there and worry about your money and do nothing. If you want to do something different, again, talk to your sponsor about some suggestions and things you can do. And there's tons of stuff on YouTube you could be looking up on managing your money and hacks to avoid buying the expensive coffee or eating out or anything like that. You know, as I've tried to eat more clean, and Dan's a big fan of that too, is you'd be amazed, even though it costs more, it can be just as satisfying, if not more so, than spending on some garbage food that's fast food out there or whatever. It just takes more effort, more time to pursue it. So talk to your sponsor. It's probably the answer to almost every question we get. And I know this person has a sponsor. So I think they'll get the answers you need.
I do too.
What? One more time?
I do too.
Okay.
I fully believe that too.
All right. One last question for today. I like it a lot. It says, in my experience as a sponsor, one issue I often have when I'm first starting to work with a newcomer is their resentment. Let's cue the music. Not just the amount, but how strongly they feel it. So what kind of advice would you give a sponsee who has just started the 12 steps, has a lot of resentment, needs the relief, but is nowhere near the steps that would give them any yet? In this same light, how would you advise a sponsee who is nowhere near step 9, but has an amends they want to make with someone who may not be alive for too much longer? As always, your advice is priceless. Me and Dan, and congrats on your upcoming 41 years of sobriety. Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate the shout out. So 2 issues here. Let's talk first about the resentment issue. It's toxic, guys. It's so brutally toxic. And again, epiphany for me with one of my spiritual teachers when she said, literally, you have to imagine a ball and chain between you and your enemy that you are tying to your leg every day that you get up and think about that. Every day you get up, you're reinforcing that steel, reinforcing that lock, and you're saying to yourself, I hate him. I don't want to think about him. Fuck that person. And you're literally tying yourself to him and closer to him every day because of resentment. It's one of the most destructive, corrosive forces on earth. But when a newcomer comes in, they're going to be bleeding with resentment. That's what was fueling their addiction, is everybody's treating me wrong, and I'm the right one. They're not. They're all wrong. They fucked me over. Blah, blah. That's their fuel, the nuclear waste that they've been living on to keep drinking themselves to death. And so you can't expect miracles out of a newcomer when it comes to resentment. Now, there is one tool I was taught by one of my top sponsors that has impressed me for not only how it helped me, but I mean for how effective it's been for patients I've brought it to. Now, some patients I bring it to and they're not open. They're not ready to let go of anything, so they're not going to gain benefit. But the first thing we do is we say, okay, just put them aside for a second. Just put them aside for 1 second. You can think I'll go back to hating them in a second. I said, well, we'll do an exercise. You want to do an exercise? Well, let's do an exercise. I said, I need you to not tell me, but to think about one of the worst things you've ever done in your life that you hope to God you're not held accountable for. I want you to bring that to mind and choke on it for a second. Really think about one of the worst things you're guilty of that you did in your entire freaking life. Now, you don't have to tell me now. I'll learn about the 5th step. But I need you to really see it. Do you see yourself doing that? You see that thing? Does it make you want to go, ugh, like you want to die? Good. Let's stay with that. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question when you think about your state of mind that day. When you did that thing that you did that you hurt right now and regret and you feel so much shame and guilt over, when you did that thing, were you in fit spiritual condition? What does that mean? That means, were you praying to a higher power? Were you working any tools? Were you going to meetings? Were you working any, did you have anything good going for you? Any principles? Anything at all? Walking hand in hand with your Creator. Could you have possibly done that thing that you did that day if you were working a really good program and doing all those things? Or would it have just been inconceivable to you that you couldn't have done those things? No, man, obviously I did those things and I was sick. I didn't have any of those tools. So yeah, you're right. I didn't have any of those tools. Oh, I'm sorry, newcomer. Are you saying you were spiritually sick? You're saying that your soul, your essence, your gut, your whole being was fucked up? Is that true? Yeah. Is that the excuse you want to use for why you want God to forgive you? Would you like the world to forgive you? Would you like to get out of a court case instead of having to go to court over it? Would you like to say, I'm sorry, I was not in my right mind. I was fucked up. I was spiritually sick. You do. Oh, you want that? Okay, I get that. Well, here's a little hit for you. You can't have that unless you give it to others. So I'm going to need you to pivot now, and I'm going to need you to think about maybe, not for real, not for sure, maybe this person who hurt you and wounded you so bad that day, is it possible that they weren't in their right mind? Is it possible they didn't have any other tools? Is it possible they just fucked up and they're sick? Are they spiritually sick? Is that possible? Can you grant them being spiritually sick over just being an asshole? Because I've watched you talk about them as an asshole and it's getting you nowhere. You're fucking choking on it, bro. You are choking on this. Or today with me, you can grant them spiritual sickness out of the charitable of your heart. And all you got to do is say maybe. You don't even have to say for sure. Just say maybe. They weren't in the right mind and I just got caught up in the crossfire. Now, what does that do? That's going to depersonalize what they did. It's going to put it back on them. Right now, you are so consumed by, they did this to me. You're going to die from that. You're going to drink yourself into a grave with that. You have got to depersonalize it and say, maybe I was an afterthought. Maybe I was just in front of them, and that's why they punched me. It would have been anybody they punched. And I have to tell you, folks, when I was presented with that tool and to use with my father, to depersonalize what this man did to me as a raging alcoholic, I was like, holy shit, I can feel it already lightening, which eventually down the road, not now, we just said maybe, can lead to forgiveness. I've got to get the personal. Rarely, I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but rarely, even when somebody does horrible things intentionally to somebody, did they wake up that day saying, my goal today is to ruin another person's whole life. I'm going to go over there and fuck them so hard and screw them so bad that it's going to ruin their whole damn life. No, usually they're so caught up in their shit. How true is that for addicts when they're breaking in a house? I'm just trying to get my fix. I didn't mean to break your shit. I didn't mean to hurt you. I was trying to get a hit. It's hard for us to accept that, but that's human nature. Sometimes we were the afterthought, not the focus. So I've done that with several people, including somebody recently in my group. And just last Tuesday, they came up to me and said, even the issues they're having with this person in their life today, they wouldn't have been able to survive them sober after group if I hadn't taken them through that exercise. That gave them a totally different perspective on it. So, Dan, any thoughts on that? Because to me, that's a miracle tool.
Yeah, that is the tool for this. I don't know that there's another one for this early thing. And I've heard Scott Lee say the same thing. I don't know if you got it from him or he got it from you. He says
some of it.
He says perhaps instead of maybe.
Yeah.
He says perhaps this person might just be sick. They might have been sick that day, just like you were when you did your worst terrible thing. And
how come you get a free get out of jail card, but they don't?
Right. Yep.
That's not gonna work, bro.
Yep. Doesn't work. Nope.
So
and it's typical. I mean, everybody comes in here chewing on one, at least one.
Yeah.
You know, usually there's like a big one, big thorn in their bottom. You know, but sometimes it's more. But everybody comes in with one big one that they just can't let go of.
Uh-huh.
And you got to use that tool. Otherwise, you can't get them to the next day.
And you got to be brutal with them and say, all right, well, just bear in mind, if you cannot give any little bit on this, you're literally saying that you need to go to prison the rest of your life for what you did because you don't deserve a break either.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yep.
That's another aspect my spiritual teacher taught me. You cannot gain forgiveness if you're still holding anything against anybody. It's not going to happen.
Yep.
So don't go out and just forgive everybody. Don't go out and say it's okay. We're not saying don't have your feelings. Nowhere in there did we say not have your feelings. You can hate them the rest of your damn life. But you got to get a shift on that and go, all right, that's my feelings, But I can see they didn't do it personally. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure yet. But I'm there
just
looking
leave
at
some
it a
room
little
for
bit.
that.
Yeah, leave a little bit of room for that, just to breathe. And then on the second question, real quick, about how would you advise someone who's not nowhere near the ninth step, but they want to make amends with someone who's not going to live much longer? I would really quiz them about who and what this is. If it's a major amends, we want to be careful about rushing into that if you're not ready, because you'll fuck it up. And I've seen this too many times. Worst thing you ever want to do, guys, is to try to make an amends and you weren't prepared and you didn't know what you were doing and you screwed up more, and now you got to go back later, and nothing is worse than having you show up again and the guy's like, what? We got to do this again? I didn't want to see you the first time. So please don't go off half-cocked and do that.
Or you screw it up and then they pass.
Well, yeah, and leave them with that. Very good point. Very good point. But I can give some take on that. One thing I always tell my patients is, look, here's where you start with. You're not going to make amends now because you don't know how and you're not at the ninth step. But you can go to your loved one, especially the ones you've hurt the most, like your spouse, who's staring at you every day and giving the side eye, and you know she's waiting to be told you're sorry. Well, we got to be careful with saying I'm sorry, because we said that at the time we were using it doesn't work. But what you need to do is acknowledge you fucked up. So just go to her when it's quiet and the kids are in their room, make sure you're not interrupted, and say, honey, I just want to say, I'm in this program now. If I try to make a full amends to you, I'm going to screw it up and you won't be satisfied, and I won't give you what you need. But if you let me work my tools, I'll be able to see clearly what I did to you. Because right now I'm still in detox and I don't get clear see shit. But I will see everything I did to you, and it would be much more meaningful and deep and profound if you'll just wait and let me do it. But for now, tonight, I want to acknowledge that I fucked you over and I did wrong and I wasn't right to do that, and I'm sorry. However it comes out naturally. But don't make a big production out of it. That's enough. Sometimes, often, actually all the time, I've given that to patients, and they do it and they say, suddenly I'm back in the big bed and the ice is thawed a little bit between us. But, you know, when someone is about to pass away, please quiz them about who and what it is. And if you think it's not a major thing that they could screw up, you can help them write their script. You know, that's a tool we use in the ninth step. Make sure you're prepared with your script. And we usually have our newcomer read it, and then your sponsor goes over it. But I think in this case, since they don't know how, you can sort of guide them and help them pick the right words and see if they agree with this would work for them. And yeah, I don't really have a big problem with that. What do you think about that, Dan?
Same. I think same thing. You know, and also, you know, use it for some fuel to get through your work. Get up early your ninth step.
There you go.
You know, unless it's like dire, like next week or something like that. You know, if it's just one of these kind of lingering things where you think, well, get to stepping. Get up early your ninth step, brother. Get it done right.
I mean, literally, by the time 6 and 7, which can go by pretty expeditiously, 2.5, 3 months.
Yep. You could.
So, are they going to pass in that time frame?
Right. Yeah. It doesn't sound like that, you know. It doesn't sound like that kind of urgency was stated in that particular letter, or they'd have probably said so.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and again, like you said, I would give some leeway and help a guy get, you know, if it was, let's say, an aging parent who we knew he or she was going to go in the next couple of weeks or something. I think we should go ahead and probably push that on through if we can.
Absolutely. Great questions. We really appreciate it. And we would love to hear from you out there. Anything you want. You will be completely anonymous. I am one too. wordrecovery@gmail.com. We also don't hit you hard with this, but we need help. Like, subscribe, pass it on, post it on your Facebook page. Each of us knows someone out there who's struggling with something, and we have many episodes on different topics. And if you see one on relationships that you think would help them, pass it on. You never know. You might help save a life. We don't know how much other people are suffering. So don't be selfish and keep it all to yourself. Share the juice. And then that way we can raise our algorithm, because YouTube doesn't know we exist. However, me and Dan are going to give ourselves a pat on the back here. If you're still listening out there, we passed a milestone of over 1 year of entering our second season of the podcast. And he told me a statistic I did not know. He said 90% of people who start a podcast fold after 6 episodes. So the fact that we're still kicking it, Dan, high five, congratulations to you. That's super cool. And and we're doing it for you all. This is not monetary. We want to help you. So we're going to ask you to please let us by sending us questions, commenting, sharing it. Help us on this mission to share recovery with the world, because we cannot do it alone. Yep. We're doing our part. We need your help.
And although we do enjoy it, and it can be some fun, it is a great deal of work.
It is a lot of work.
Both of us.
Yes, but we are committed. Even if you don't want these tools, we're going to give them to you.
Yeah, we're going to leave them footprints in the sand one way or the other.
There you go. I like that. Well, we like to end with the Serenity Prayer, so if you at home would like to join us, it's always good to say a little prayer. It'll get by better in the day when you do. So here we go, Dan. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Just for today, keep coming back. It works if you work it, and you die if you don't. Woohoo! We love you. Come back and see us. Peace out.